2021. Present with us today are Representative McCabe, Representative McKay, Representative Drummond, Representative Cronk, Representative Hannon, and myself, Representative Hopkins. If we have anybody participating remotely on phone, which we do, please make sure you mute your microphones when you're not actively speaking, so we can get a clear recording of these proceedings for posterity. I have to say, I think overall the legislature has done a remarkable job of, and all the presenters, a remarkable job of muting themselves on Teams. I haven't had to say it all that many times. For those listening at home, all of today's presentations, as well as background information on Alaska's motor fuel tax, can be found by visiting akleg.gov and entering House Bill 104 into the search bar at the top of the page. Are there any questions before we get on to today's business? Doesn't sound like it. So today's meeting will be about Alaska's motor fuel tax, House Bill 104. We'll start with a quick word from Representative Andy Josephson, the bill's sponsor, followed by a presentation from Deputy Tax Director Nicole Reynolds at the Department of Revenue. Then we will open the floor to questions. Following that, we'll take public testimony, and then look for the will of the committee if we want to move on with this bill and let allow it to go to finance. Any questions? Thank you. I would like to note for the committee that the Department of Environmental Conservation did respond to committee question regarding the Spill Prevention and Response Fund. And that document has been loaded up under basis and is also should be available in your binders. We'll have all the fiscal notes as well. One of those is from DEC dealing with that SPAR fund. Representative Josephson, your aide, if you'd like to go ahead and put yourselves on the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andy Josephson. I represent District 17. It's the UMed in Anchorage. I appreciate the committee's hearing this bill for a second time. I appreciated the first time as well. And I was a supporter of this bill in its previous incarnation, or iteration, last year, and was sorry that it didn't make it through the process, although it came very close. The bill fundamentally doubles what is a very small tax set in 1970, and in doing so, although the money is designated and not dedicated, it traditionally is used, and I think would be used in the future, for highway improvements and things that make our economy work and run. And I think it's a reasonable fee to pay given the effect of inflation. I noted last week, or when we previously heard the bill, that there was by happenstance, a very supportive op-ed that made the case that mileage now is higher, and therefore there's more road miles covered on less tax. And then we also have a diminishing throughput, and that's been a problem as well to help fund this enterprise. And then secondarily, it has the advantage of increasing revenue for the spill prevention and response unit, in this case the prevention account. And so I think it's not an unreasonable sum to pay. I noted when I testified before remotely that it would be somewhat more costly for rural than urban Alaskans, but still, I think, manageable. And I ask for your ardent support of it.
Thank you, Representative Josephson. Let the record show that at 1:36 in the p.m., Representative Sponholtz joined us. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor? I have a quick one. Because the spring revenue forecast just dropped into our mailboxes recently, if members of the committee wanted to look at how this shows up in that booklet, would we find it under designated general funds, undesignated general funds? Do you know where that would exactly show up? And the Department of Revenue might be able to answer that, but I don't need a page, just wondering general one.
It should be in designated general funds.
All right. That answers that question. Thank you very much, Representative. If there are no committee questions on this, I would like to go ahead and turn to Nicole Reynolds, Deputy Director of the Division of Tax at the Alaska Department of Revenue, for a presentation on Alaska's motor fuels tax. I'd ask that any members please hold their questions to the end of each slide. And Ms. Reynolds, please let me know when you're done with each slide so I can make sure we hear the chime and move to the next slide. Please put yourself on the record and proceed with your presentation.
Great, thank you. I hear a bit of an echo. Do you hear an echo on your end?
No, ma'am. We hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Reynolds, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Tax Division at the Department of Revenue. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. I am going to present to you a high-level overview of Alaska's motor fuel tax. Before we begin the presentation, I'd like to preface with a disclaimer that I'm not offering tax or legal advice, but rather merely just giving a high-level overview, overview of Alaska's motor fuel tax structure. Individuals who are seeking tax or legal advice are encouraged to consult with their tax representative or tax attorney for specific tax or legal advice. And I'm ready to move on to slide 2.
And we're there. Thank you.
Great, thanks. This slide shows an overview of the motor fuel tax statutes and regulations. This is where they can be found. I want to point out that motor fuel is defined by statute as fuel used in an engine for the propulsion of a motor vehicle or aircraft, fuel used in or on watercraft for any purpose, or in a stationary engine, machine, or mechanical contrivance, which is run by an internal combustion motor. Below that definition, there are the regulations that interpret the motor fuel tax statutes. There's contained in statute, there's a long list of fuel types and uses that are not considered motor fuel and are therefore exempt from the motor fuel tax. For example, fuel sold to federal, state, and local governments for official use is exempt. Fuel used to heat private or commercial buildings or facilities is exempt. Fuel sold or transferred between qualified dealers is exempt. Fuel sold to electric or telephone cooperatives is exempt. Fuel sold by charitable institutions and also fuel used in flights to and from foreign countries are exempt. Certain fuel types and uses are also exempt from the surcharge, but there are some differences. Heating fuel is not exempt from the surcharge, and then exported fuel is not exempt unless it was originally refined outside of the United States. Unless there are any questions on this slide, we can move to the next one.
Doesn't look like it. Please proceed, Director.
Great, thank you. This slide contains a brief history of Alaska's motor fuel tax. Alaska first levied a motor fuel tax in 1945 at a rate of 1 cent per gallon. Although the rates have increased over the years, the basic structure of the tax has remained the same. 1970 was the last time the highway rate was increased. 1977 was the last time the marine fuel rate increased. 1994 was the last time the aviation and jet fuel rates increased. In the late 2000s, the motor fuel tax was suspended across all fuel types for a year due to rising fuel prices. And in 2015, HB158 added a 0.95 cent per gallon surcharge on all refined fuel sold within the state. That's less than a penny per gallon. Refined fuel means fuel produced from oil used in an engine or used to create heat, energy, or power. The surcharge revenue is set aside for appropriation to the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation's Spill Prevention and Response Division. And lastly, in 2019, SB 115 was introduced and was very similar to the current bill before you, but it ultimately died when the House adjourned sine die. And if there are no questions here, we can move on to slide 4.
Please proceed.
Okay, so this slide contains our current motor fuel type or tax rates and surcharge. The highway fuels rate is 8 cents per gallon. Marine fuel is 5 cents per gallon. Aviation fuel is 4.7 cents per gallon. Jet fuel is 3.2 cents per gallon. And then gasohol is either 8 cents a gallon or 2 cents a gallon, depending on the season, location, and EPA mandates. And then again, the surcharge is 0.95 cents per gallon. Generally, motor fuel is taxed when it is sold by a qualified dealer directly to a user or to a reseller. Sales between qualified dealers are not taxed. A qualified dealer is a wholesaler or distributor that refines, imports, manufactures, or produces motor fuel, and they must be licensed through the Department of Revenue. Motor fuel is also taxed when it is imported into the state and not sold to a qualified dealer. In other words, persons who first transfer, sell, or use untaxed motor fuel in the state are responsible for paying the tax. In the event fuel is sold and transferred into a common storage tank, which is a storage tank that serves both taxable and exempt uses or multiple taxable uses, the fuel is taxed at the highest tax rate of use, and then the taxpayer may claim a refund if they establish that the fuel was used for an exempt purpose or used for a purpose that would qualify for a lower tax rate than the rate that was paid. Does anyone have questions on this slide?
Yes, Deputy Director. Representative Hannon has a question.
Thank you, through the chair. You're familiar with this because you at Revenue work with these minutia details all the time. Could you give us an example of the kind of fuel in that untaxed, delivered into the state, then put into a commingled tax location? So it's bulk fuel, and I guess I'm thinking, is that a seafood processor who's bringing up a large ship and brings fuel for their season, or what? Can you give us an example of what kind of entity that is, just so we can track? Most of these things I can visualize and track, but that one left me confused.
So, and you're specifically talking about the common storage tank?
Well, the last type that you spoke about was you brought in untaxed fuel from another location, and if you were to sell it, you would need to pay the tax on it, but if you were using it yourself, I presume, then you don't have to. But then you might commingle it with taxable fuel in a bulk storage location, and now all must be taxed. So I was just trying to track what those are.
Okay. So I think the most common situation that we see is when people buy fuel that either is going to be used for heating purposes, or they say they're going to use it for heating purposes, or it's going to be used for dual purposes. And so if the fuel is transferred into a common storage tank and and the person is going to use it for highway fuel as well as heating fuel, then they have to pay the tax at the highway fuel rate, and then they can apply for a refund where they have to provide substantiation that they in fact used that fuel for exempt purposes like heating fuel. And so that would be a common situation that we see.
Follow up?
Did that answer your question?
Well, it does, but now I guess my question is, so you're using singular pronouns. So we have individual Alaskans who are shipping up bulk fuel that they're going to store and then use some on their own vehicles later on highways. Can you give me a ballpark number of, is this one guy a year, or is this 10,000 Alaskans or 100,000 Alaskans?
Well, the term persons is a very broad term. So it includes individuals as well as corporations and other types of entities. So so it's not just individuals who I'm referring to. It can include multiple types of entities.
Mr. Chairman, could you give me an example of a type of business who likely does this on a regular basis and they're filing with you annually, because I just can't visualize it. I'm not doubting you, I'm just trying to understand it.
So it could be like a mining company
Okay.
would do something like this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Reynolds. We have Representative Sponholz has a question as well.
Thank you. Through the chair, Ms. Reynolds, I think I heard you reference heating fuel both as taxed and untaxed, and could you kind of describe the categories of heating fuel that are taxed and untaxed?
So heating fuel is not taxed, but it is subject to the surcharge.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Any further questions? Looks like not. Representative Drummond does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The surcharge on at the bottom of slide 4, does that is that charged on all the types of fuels on that page, including jet fuel?
The surcharge is yes. Aviation fuel is subject to the surcharge.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Looks like no. Please proceed on to slide number 5.
And actually, I'm sorry. I think I misspoke. The aviation fuel is not subject to the surcharge. I was misreading my slide.
Okay.
I guess Representative Drummond does have a follow-up question then.
Okay, there are 5 types of fuels listed on that page above the surcharge. Which ones do not get the surcharge? Just aviation fuel or jet fuel also?
Okay. Let me see here.
Described in the bill on page 3.
So the statute that that governs the surcharge is 4340.005. So the following types of fuel that are exempt from the surcharge is fuel sold to a federal or state government agency for official use, fuel refined and used outside the United States, liquefied petroleum gas, aviation fuel, and fuel sold or transferred between qualified dealers. So if the fuel does not fit into that, those categories, then it is subject to the surcharge. So the highway fuel, the marine fuel, and the gasohol on this slide would be subject to the surcharge.
Representative Drummond.
Okay, follow up, Mr. Chair. So then aviation fuel and jet fuel are not subject to the surcharge.
Aviation fuel is not subject to the surcharge. And I believe jet fuel would be, but I can follow up with you on that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Director. Now I think we can move along to page 5.
Okay. So this slide gives some information for you about the returns and the tax payments. Returns are filed and taxes paid monthly. Generally, the tax is collected at the time of sale and remitted to the Department of Revenue on the last day of the month following the month in which the fuel was sold or transferred. Taxpayers are required to file and pay online, and they must file a separate return for each type of fuel sold. Taxpayers who timely file and pay their taxes can receive a timely filing credit of 1% of tax and surcharge due, and that's limited to $100 maximum per return. There are 4 separate returns that taxpayers need to use if they sell this type of fuel. So gasoline, diesel, aviation, and gasohol. Does anyone have questions on this slide?
No, ma'am. Please proceed.
Okay. This slide here just gives you an idea of the number of taxable gallons that have been sold for each fuel type, broken out by the last 4 years. And over the last 4 years, we have seen about a 20 million gallon decline in fuel sold. Anyone have questions on this slide?
No, Deputy Director, you are free to proceed.
Okay. And then this slide here gives a summary of historic tax collections over the last 4 years with a breakout of the different fuel types and the surcharges, as well as penalty and interest, and then where the money goes. So that bottom section, the money is deposited into the general fund. The different fuel types have different accounts within the general fund that the money goes into, but we didn't break that out here. And then aviation tax, 60% of that is refunded to the municipalities that own or lease and operate an airport. Are there questions on this slide?
Nope, please proceed.
Okay. And then this slide, slide number 8, just gives kind of a visual diagram of our motor fuel tax collections. And over the past 4 years, we've collected between 28.9 million and 30.5 million. We've seen a slight increase in collections in fiscal year 2020 as compared to fiscal year 2019. And are there questions on this slide?
Still no, Deputy Director. Looks like you made it through mostly scot-free. Thank you. At this point, if you're Deputy Director, if you're available to stay online just in case any questions do pop up, that would be appreciated. Before I move along to public testimony, I want to note that we have a number of people from the administration here if any questions do pop up. We have the Department of Environmental Conservation Admin Services Director, as well as the Admin Services Director for the Department of Transportation. We also have the Department of Motor Vehicles Director, and we have the director for aviation, so pretty much all of these fiscal notes as well. And we do have a question from Representative Sponholz.
All right, thank you. Through the chair, I did not know that we had somebody from DOT on the line, and I wanted to ask, looking back to slide 7, it shows that there's been a decline in aviation gasoline. The jet fuel makes sense to me. It's going up because our cargo is going up, but I see aviation gasoline has been sort of steadily declining over the last 4 years, and I'm wondering if they have any information about why that is or explanation.
Mr. Pannone or Mr. Binder, been spending a lot of time with us lately. Do you have answers to that question?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, this is John Binder, Deputy Commissioner with Department of Transportation and Public Facilities. And yes, that has been a trend actually nationwide related to general aviation. Numbers continue to go down as the general aviation pilot population ages and not as many younger folks entering that realm, that the overall usage of aviation gasoline has decreased. That in combination with many of the smaller aircraft as carriers and fleets upgrade to newer aircraft, most of those are more turbine type engines that use jet fuel versus aviation gasoline.
Thank you.
Representative Schrage might have some arguments with that age out of piloting, but I understand the logic. Any other questions for any of the administration people? All right. Well, thank you very much. If those of you from the administration could stay on for the remainder of the hearing, that would be much appreciated, just so we can make sure we get any questions answered. At this point, we're going to go ahead and gavel in for public testimony. Public testimony is officially open. To respect everyone's time, it is my intent to limit public testimony to 2 minutes per testifier. So I'll have an alarm here going. If we could please start with Donna Shantz. Please put yourself on the record with any affiliations and your name, and please proceed with your testimony.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Donna Shantz, and I'm testifying today on behalf of the Prince William Sound and Regional Citizens Advisory Council. I've worked for the council for over 20 years and currently serve as the council's executive director. Reduced revenue has resulted in a chronic and continuing revenue shortfall for the Oil and Hazardous Substances Release Prevention and Response Fund, also known as the 470 or Oil Haz Fund. This revenue shortfall diminishes the ability of the state to prevent oil spills and hazardous substance releases, maintain an adequate level of readiness, and the ability to respond rapidly should a spill occur in order to protect human health and the environment. The Council strongly supports Section 5 of House Bill 104, which includes an increase on the refined fuel surcharge from just under a penny per gallon to 1.5 cents per gallon. The revenue from this increase goes directly into the prevention account within the 470 fund and is necessary in order to close the revenue gap. The 470 fund was designed to be self-sustaining to ensure that the Spill Prevention and Response Division of the Department of Environmental Conservation, or SPAR, has adequate funds on hand for immediate response to oil spills and for maintaining an effective prevention program without the need for annual general fund appropriation. The prevention account, one of two within the fund, provides most of the operational funding for the DEC SPAR division. The SPAR division has absorbed the elimination of 17 positions since 2015, and the governor's FY22 operating budget proposes cuts that would eliminate 5 more positions. The elimination of additional positions will result in increased workloads for employees in many areas of responsibility, including a caseload of over 2,400 active contaminated sites. The division is beyond doing more with less and is now having to make difficult choices about how to do less with less and still meet its statutory responsibilities. For instance, it's the council's understanding that with the additional 5 positions being cut in the governor's FY22 budget, SPAR will have to prioritize contaminated sites, resulting in delays in addressing sites at the bottom of their priority list, or perhaps not having some sites addressed at all.
Ms. Shantz, you're at about 2.5 minutes. If you could please wrap up so we can proceed, that would be appreciated, but thank you.
Okay, the state must be able to adequately engage in oil spill and hazardous substance release prevention activities and robustly respond if pollution occurs, which is critical to protecting the environment, economy, health, safety, and welfare of Alaskans. So that concludes my testimony. I cut it short. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. I appreciate that. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up, we have Mako Haggerty. Please state your name and any affiliations, and please proceed with your testimony.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in on, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to thank Representative Josephson for bringing this bill forward. I strongly support it. And, last legislative session, we had a bill, Senate Bill 115, that made it to the 1 yard line, and because of the COVID, didn't quite cross into the end zone, which is where we thought we were going last year. So I'm really appreciative that this was brought up again. I support it. We need all of the the positions that are being lost at the SPAR division is a great concern to me, and I'm also on the board of the Prince William Sound Regional Citizen Advisory Council, and so that's where I'm getting a lot of my background. But this SPAR division is very important to the whole state, and right now, a lot of the funding is being used to clean up like some of the PFAS contamination and some of the clean up junkyards, and they're not recovering the SPAR division hasn't been successful at collecting for those cleanups. So that does come out of the SPAR budget, and it's a good thing that budget is there. So anyway, I strongly encourage everyone to support House Bill 104. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Just before you get off, can you please state your name and affiliation for the record?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Mako Haggerty, and from Homer, Alaska. I represent the Kenai Peninsula Borough on the Prince William Sound Regional Citizen Advisory Council.
Thank you very much. Mr. Haggerty, do you run the water taxi service there in Homer using your first name?
I sure do, and I'm in the process of running it right now as we speak.
Well, thank you very much. I've used your services many times down there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Next up, we have Robert Archibald. Mr. Archibald, please state your name and any affiliation for the record, and please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Robert Archibald. I'm from Homer. I'm currently the president of the board of directors of the Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Council, and I represent on that board the city of Homer. I would like to state my strong support for passage of HB 104. I concur with the statements and supports provided by Donna Shantz of the Prince William Sound Citizens Advisory Council. Again, my interest is in Section 5 of the bill. This bill, if passed, will provide a much-needed increased revenue for the 470 fund, that the Oil and Hazardous Substance Release Prevention and Response Fund, and the Spill Prevention and Response Division of DEC, SPAR. I've lived and worked in Alaska long before the Exxon Valdez and understand the reason for a strong and functioning SPAR division. Over recent years, the SPAR division has experienced a reduction in funding and loss of positions. The revenue shortfall within the 470 fund diminishes the ability of the state to provide oil spill and hazardous substance release and maintain adequate level of readiness and adequately respond should an oil spill occur. The state needs a coordinated plan and a budget to fund oversight and prevention and to ensure the state's ability to oversee cleanup efforts if a major oil spill occurs. In addition, revenue sources are not secured, the fund balance is projected to be in the red by 2014. The increased surcharge on refined fuel products contained within Section 5 of HB 104, which will go directly to the prevention account within the 470 fund, is sufficient to close the revenue gap and make SPAR self-sufficient into the future.
Mr. Archibald, you've reached about 2:15. If you could wrap up, please, that'd be much appreciated.
Sure, thank you. The state must be able to adequately engage the oil spill and hazardous substance release prevention activities and robustly respond to pollution if it occurs, which is critical to protecting the environment, economy, and health, safety, and welfare of Alaskans. That concludes my testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Archibald, for your testimony. Next up, we have Mike Coons. Mr. Coons, if you could please state your name and affiliation for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yes, sir. My name is Mike Coons. I'm the president of the Massachusetts chapter of AMAC Action, and we oppose HB 104. In testimony from Mr. Granman last week, staffer for Representative Josephson, he said per DOT that the average mileage used for vehicles is 9,100 miles per year. I live in Palmer, and I worked at J-Bear, so roughly 100 miles per day. I work 5 days a week, so that is not anywhere close to 9,100 miles per year. In fact, that is 24,000 miles per year. There are a lot of Valley residents that work in Anchorage, so that would range even higher for those that live in Wasilla, Big Lake, etc. And he also said the average cost increase is about $40 a year. That, in fact, is not true. Nothing in this testimony even touched on the 10-cent per gallon tax increase by Anchorage on top of the 8-cent state tax. So the Anchorage driver would pay 26 cents per gallon in taxes. We oppose this not just because we oppose additional taxation, but because of the impact it will have specifically on seniors. Seniors who have retired are on a fixed income. So if this were to pass, my budget for fuel consumption will have to be altered and thus take money from other parts of my budget to pay for the increase. What with what is happening in this new White House, we already have seen almost $1 a gallon increase at the pump. That's bad enough. Now Representative Josephson wants to harm our seniors and all Alaskans even more. As to electric cars, not sure how people recharge their cars in Anchorage, but if charging stations are used, why not tax electricity as well? Say 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Those are people that obviously can afford such a tax. Isn't taxation the left's means as to redistribution of wealth? Sadly, the leftist House will pass this out with full no votes by our conservative caucus. I and others will do all we can to kill this in the Senate. For the conservatives on this committee, we fully expect a no vote here and on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coons, for your testimony. Are there any questions? No, sir. So thank you very much, Mr. Coons. Next up, we have Joe Michelle with the Alaska Trucking Association. Mr. Michelle, please put yourself and your affiliation on the record and proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Michelle. I'm the Executive Director here at the Alaska Trucking Association. ATA has supported the fuel tax increase in previous iterations of this bill, and we maintain our support of HB 104, specifically that it's provided that the monies raised go solely to the maintenance of Alaskans' roads.
Mr. Michelle, good to hear from you, but it's pretty hard to hear from you, so if you could speak up, it'd be much appreciated.
Absolutely. We are testifying today just to show a little bit of concern on HB 104 in regards to maybe putting some sideboards on this bill. HB 104 addresses Alaska Statute 434010, specifically parts A and B. That is the part that is proposing raising the fuel tax from 8 cents a gallon to 16 cents a gallon. In Part G of the same statute, just a few paragraphs down, it lists what the motor fuel tax monies would be used for. And there's wording saying for the construction of highways, projects, ferries, including approaches, appurtenances, related facilities, acquisitions of right-of-ways or easements, and other highway costs, including surveys, administration, and related matters. ETA feels this is an opportunity for placing some sideboards on HB 104 to ensure that the monies are specifically used for highway maintenance. I'm available for any questions. Otherwise, thank you for the committee's time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michelle, for talking on behalf of the Alaska Trucking Association. Hope you're doing well. Any questions? It appears we have none. Thank you very much, Mr. Michelle, and look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you for your testimony. Next up, we have Brittany Stompahar with the Alaska General Contractors, Associated General Contractors. Please proceed with your testimony and put your name and affiliation on the record as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hopkins. For the record, my name is Brittany Stompahar. I am the Government Relations Liaison for the Associated General Contractors of Alaska. AGC is the largest construction trade association in the state, representing over 620 Alaskan contractors, specialty contractors, suppliers, manufacturers, and businesses in Alaska. I am testifying today on their behalf to express our support for HB104. The last time Alaska updated its motor fuel tax rate was over 50 years ago in 1970. For a long time, Alaska has had the lowest motor fuel tax rates in the nation, and this increase will only change that ranking slightly. Adjusting Alaska's motor fuel tax rates will take a meaningful and reasonable step toward our ability to fund the state's backlog of transportation infrastructure and maintenance needs, along with improving our state's general fiscal stability. This increase is good for our industry and good for Alaska. It will have a positive effect on our businesses, the families we employ, and the safety of Alaskans who depend on the infrastructure we build and maintain. AGC has long supported a fuel tax increase, and we appreciate the leadership of Representative Josephson on this issue and the opportunity to testify today in support of HB 104. Thank you, Chair Hopkins.
Thank you, Ms. Stampahar, and congratulations on your recent nuptials. I'll have to learn that new name. Are there any questions for the Associated General Contractors? It appears there are not. Thank you very much. And say hello to Fairbanks for me. Next up, we have Edith McKee. Please, Ms. McKee, put your name and affiliation on the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, thank you, Representative Josephson and the House Transportation Committee. My name is Edith McKee, and I represent HDR Alaska, and we are calling to offer our support for HB 104 and the efforts to maintain Alaska's infrastructure by increasing the state motor fuel tax revenues. Alaska boasts 5,635 center line miles of roads, highways, and the largest aviation system in North America. Since 2014, the Alaska Department of Transportation, Highway and Aviation Maintenance and Operations budget has been cut by as much as 20%. Operational needs currently exceed proposed budget allocations for highways and aviation. Impacts from these M&O shortfalls have impacted safety and communities across Alaska. Across the nation, 31 states have raised the state motor fuel tax since 2013 in recognition that states must now lead funding of their transportation infrastructure. While many states fund 75% of the transportation spending, Alaska funds a mere 10% of our transportation spending. And as a former DOT employee, it's often the maintenance and operations division that first has layoffs, that first receives budget cuts, because so much of highway design and construction is funded through federal dollars. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to provide testimony in support of HB 104. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. McKee. Are there any questions? It appears not. Thank you for your time today. And next up, we have Bert Hofteling. If you could state your name and affiliation for the record, and please proceed with your testimony.
Hi, my name is Bert Hofteling, and I represent myself and basically all of the middle-class Alaskans out there that are not fortunate enough to work at those high-paying jobs, but do have to do a lot of commuting back and forth.
Sir, if you could speak up loudly into your phone, much appreciated, so that we could hear you in the committee and for the record.
Okay, just 1 second here.
That's already better. Thank you.
Did this help?
Yes, sir.
All right. My name is Bert Hofteling, and I'm calling for myself and all the Alaskans out there that don't have the ability to even know that this is going on. We commute basically on a daily basis, there's 100,000 of us that work in the valley and travel to Anchorage, and just the increase of the 10 cents that Anchorage had done on all of us for purchasing our fuel there, it made it so that it was actually cheaper for the first time in a long time to be able to purchase the gas in the valley, and we were saving ourselves. Now here in the middle of a pandemic, with we have the largest majority of Alaskans that are still without work, trying to recover, trying to get their rents caught back up in current, trying to get their bills back to where they were before this all happened, and now you want to increase the fuel tax. It's just disproportional and wrong timing for a discussion like this to be happening, and I'm completely against this bill being passed. I think Mike Coons knocked it out of the ballpark in his testimony earlier today, describing the impacts that this is going to have on Alaskans, and I really hope you reconsider this for a different time, and today is just not that time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Are there any questions for the presenter? Not at this time, so thank you very much, sir, for your testimony. And at this point, seeing nobody else, is that correct that there's nobody else online? All right, we're good to go, so I'm going to go ahead and close public testimony. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd love to have the bill sponsor and the staff come back forward to the mic. And if there's any closing comments or questions for the bill sponsor at this time. I see no questions. Any closing comments, Mr. Grabman?
Yes, please. For the record, my name is Nathaniel Grabman, staff to Representative Josephson, and should I get closer or further from this for feedback? Yeah, okay. Not to belabor the point, but I think most of the pro views have already been stated, so I'm not going to go into that too much. Two of the callers said that they were commuters from the Mat-Su borough and raised concerns about the additional costs which would be associated with this bill were it to pass. I recently received a document from Dave Hansen, who is the former Economic Development Director for the Mat-Su borough. He had indicated that he wanted to participate in the public comment today, but he had a scheduling conflict. In it, he goes through some assumptions as far as the math, and basically the punchline to this is that a potential commuter from the Mat-Su would be looking at around a little over $100 in extra cost per year. I'm not disputing that. At the same time, the more you drive, the more wear and tear you're going to put on the roads. And he also pointed out that there are some compensating factors which may work in that situation. For example, the average Mat-Su home costs roughly $78,000 less than the average home in Anchorage, and the average job or the average earner in Anchorage has a higher per capita income. So there are trade-offs here, obviously, and just something to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Grabman. Any questions on that? Mr. McCabe?
I'd love to see his data on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure if he made those statements and if he's the guy that you say he has data to back it up. I drive that. It's a 150-mile round trip for me, and I can tell you right now that it's not $100 a year. It might be $100 a month, and frankly, my home is just as expensive as some in Anchorage. So I think it's just disingenuous to sort of park the argument there. So if you have data that you can send to us, or he has the data, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you much, Mr. Grabman. If you could send that to the committee chair, and we'd be happy to share it out. Any further questions for the bill sponsor? Representative Cronk.
It's got a statement. I'm confused on the value of a home in Anchorage versus the value, how this relates to this bill. Thank you.
Hopefully that information will be in there as we share it out. So thank you very much, Mr. Cronk, Representative Cronk. Do we, at this time, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Grabman, for your closing comments there. At this point, I'd like to feel the will of the committee. If we would like to move the bill, if there's a motion, or if we would like to hold on to it for another day. Brief and ease. Yep. All right, we are back on the record. Sorry about that. Representative Hannon?
Chair Hopkins, I move to advance House Bill 104, version 32, LS0444/A from committee with attached individual recommendations and attached fiscal notes.
Object.
All right, thank you. We have an objection from Representative McCabe. Let's see. Would you like to speak to your objection, Mr. McCabe, or Representative McCabe?
Thanks for that. Yes, Mr. Chairman. So I think that we've had public testimony here, 2, 5, 7, 9 people, and 7 of them were either 2 state entities and the rest were large entities that are obviously looking to mitigate their costs on the backs of people that drive. I think 100,000 a day is wrong. I think it's closer to 50,000 a day that drive the Glen Highway between the Mat-Su and Anchorage, and some of them as far north as Talkeetna. I think we need to give them another chance for public testimony and maybe advertise this a little bit more. Not sure too many people knew about this. So I love that we have invited public testimony. Obviously, the 7 that testified from the sort of larger entities, SPAR and such, were all keyed to the testimony by Representative Josephson and his team, and I appreciate that, but none of the other, no other public has been able to testify. So I'd like to hold it over until Thursday and invite further public testimony, or till the next time we meet and invite further public testimony. Thank you.
Understood on that, Representative McCabe. Thank you. It will go on to House Finance, of course, where there'll be many other opportunities for public testimony there. But do you maintain your objection still?
I do.
All right, thank you. At this point, Mr. Buhner, would you please call the roll? Brief it easy. Yeah, Joe. Sorry, Ms. Buhner, would you please call the roll for passage of the bill?
Representative Drummond.
Yes.
Representative Hannon.
Yes.
Representative McKay.
No.
Representative McCabe.
No.
Representative Kronk.
No.
Representative Spanholz.
Yes.
Chair Hopkins.
Yes.
Totals are 4 yes, 3 no.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buhner. And with a vote of 4 yeas and 3 nays, House Bill 104 passes from committee onto House Finance. We will now go at ease while members have the opportunity to sign the committee report.
And the ability to decide the right time to start a family. There's a personal decision and the government should not have authority to affect this decision. And by the way, the right to privacy does not start at age 18. I can think of all kinds of scenarios where a minor might want to have an abortion without the consent of their parents. I am so grateful for our state Supreme Court. They are considering the rights of all Alaskans, not one representative's or select constituents' desires. Thank you for providing me this opportunity. I'm finished.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kidd. Duran Hickman of Fairbanks, please state your name, and if I mispronounce it, I apologize, and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Doran Hickman, Senior, and I live in Fairbanks, part of Senate District A, and I oppose SJR 4. Thank you, committee, for giving me a moment in time of your time, and I just oppose this bill because there's a whole lot of factors that are involved. I mean, economics, mental health, a woman's right to choose. We're not here to judge, and we're not here to, we're not placed on this earth to condemn them. There's just factors involved. There's economics. I mean, it's just all type of factors that are involved, and we should consider that before we start trying to change the laws. And I'm finished.
Thank you very much, Duran, for your testimony today. Lynette Pham of Anchorage, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, my name is Lynette. I live in Anchorage, and I am representing myself. I am testifying in opposition of SJR 4. This bill proposes to permanently amend our Constitution to pave the way for banning safe and legal abortion. If you consider Alaska's history and the United States' history of reproductive rights before these modern times, forced sterilization of indigenous women without their consent was common and impacted generations of family with trauma. This aggressive force of control was racist and a form of colonization. This amendment to our Constitution forces government control onto the bodies of indigenous, brown, and black people who can't get pregnant. It would make space for removing our rights without our consent and would perpetuate forms of racism, colonization, and government control over our bodies. Individual rights and freedoms go to the heart of who we are as a state, including the right to access safe and legal abortion. Chair and committee, please reject SJR 4 because each of us deserves the opportunity to control our lives at the most basic level, our bodies, our families, and our lives past. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Lynette. We appreciate you testifying. Next, we have Christine Robbins of Fairbanks. Good afternoon, Christine. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, my name is Christine Robbins from Fairbanks, Alaska. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm calling in support of SJR 4. This bill puts the will of the people back squarely in the hands of the people. So there's an extreme imbalance and lack of decency on the part of activist judges who are acting outside the scope of their duties. This usurpation of power must stop. The mistake that many make is ending with the Alaska Supreme Court instead of carrying their issue to the Supreme Court of the United States. The unconstitutional limitations that the Alaska Supreme Court has imposed on Alaskans by radical judges needs to be addressed. This doesn't limit our rights. It gives us more. The rights of the baby, the parent, the individual, and the people as a whole are addressed. Abortion is never safe, and almost 100% of the time results in a death. So this is a very responsible and humane step in the right direction, and I urge you to pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine, for your testimony today. I also want to let those listening know that Senator Reinbold is now in the committee, but by telephone and listening. So she is listening. And next we have Julie Endel of Palmer. Julie, please identify yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Julie Endel, and I'm speaking on my behalf, and I am in favor of SJR 4 for many reasons. I think the Alaskans should have a say in deciding the vote. That's why we vote. And also for another reason why is as a taxpayer. I do not want to fund abortions. I think it's wrong. A lot of people just testified that they want privacy, right to privacy. Then if they want right to privacy, then by all means, you fund it yourself. Please do not put a burden on the taxpayer to fund abortions. And I think we Alaskans should have the right to vote and keep the Supreme Court judges out of it. And that's what we have voting for. Thank you, Senator Hughes.
Thank you for your testimony, Julie. Next is Candace Kale of Denali.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Candace Kale. I live in Denali, and I'm representing myself. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to testify. I strongly oppose SJR4. This is an extreme bill that proposes to permanently change the state constitution, taking away individual rights and freedoms, which are the foundation of our country, and it's a source of immense pride in the state of Alaska, okay? This is all done in an attempt to remove our ability and the right to make decisions about our own lives and to control what happens to our bodies, whether or not to become a parent. SJ4 seems to me to be an attempt to bypass one branch of the government, the courts, because the legislature is unhappy with their rulings. Rulings by our courts are a part of the process. On a personal note, I am a woman who has had an abortion, and I have also placed a child for adoption. Okay? I've been in both places, and both decisions were my choice. They were right for me, and no one else should be able to make that decision or take my rights away to decide for myself. Again, I oppose SJR4, and I urge you to do so as well. That's the end.
Thank you, Candace, for your testimony. Kelvin Rogers of Fairbanks. State your name for the record, please, and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please state your name and continue.
My name is Kelvin Rogers. I'm from Fairbanks, Alaska, and I oppose this resolution. I think the courts are doing a great job of following the law and the science. And I frankly don't trust the public to get it right on this one. Sometimes the courts are ahead of public opinion. I'm going to cite Loving v. Virginia, the case that made interracial marriage legal in the U.S. The Supreme Court made that decision in 1967, and the public approval didn't reach 50% until 1995. Make no mistake, if this bill passes, it will be followed with zealous and unconstitutional restrictions, wasting more of our state's time and money fighting legal battles over a political budge issue. To those who do have a deep problem with abortions occurring, I suggest that rather than trying to litigate it this way, you divert your efforts to funding sexual and birth control education, which would better Alaskans and reduce instances where people who have no other choice have to seek out an abortion. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers, for joining us today. Next, and I please correct the pronunciation of your name. I'm guessing I'll get it wrong. Xochitl Lopez of Homer. Please state your name for the record and continue with your testimony.
Hi, yes, thank you. My name is Xochitl Lopez Ayala, and I'm on Denali lands in Homer, and I oppose SJR4. Senator Hughes, it's shameful that you would try to bring this attack on abortion access again. And earlier you stated, quote, alleged protection, end quote. That's incorrect, Ms. Hughes. Abortion is protected by the U.S. Constitution as well as our Alaska Constitution. You know, Senator Reinbold, it has been a lot of work, a lot of time and energy. Constantly have to remind you that abortion is legal. I'm having to show up to these meetings and keep advocating for Alaskans' abortion access. Senator Hughes and Reinbold, if you care about Alaskans and Alaskan parents, why are you not focusing your time on our lack of affordable housing, rising child care, increasing medical costs, introducing comprehensive sex ed, navigating the double day with the COVID-19 pandemic, parenting at home and learning? You spend all this time. Senator Hughes.
Just a minute. Let's allow the testifier to complete, and you have, go ahead.
What just needs to be stayed to the bill at hand. I am. It's all a part of reproductive justice. I can go ahead and send you all some articles about that as well. But you could be advocating for medical expansion, COVID relief for housing and economic impact. Laws preventing teens from obtaining health care unless they can talk to a parent put their health and safety at risk and do not increase family communication. Folks who have sexual violence done to them enacting in a pregnancy, sometimes by family members. For teens who feel they cannot safely turn to their parents, government coercion doesn't change anything. Going to court jeopardizes their confidentiality, particularly in small communities where a person may be recognized by the judge or court panel. When the government controls our bodily autonomy and infringes on our access, it opens the doors for such procedures as forced sterilization and continued attack on BIPOC folks. That's Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Let me remind you both that, and all those on the line that are for this, that Roe versus Wade was not about the moral implications of abortion. It was about safety, equal access, and especially the right to privacy in a person with the uterus choosing to have an abortion.
Ms. Lopez, I gave extra time for you because of the earlier comments interrupting you, but you are now at time. Can you please wrap up your statement?
Okay, thank you. These decisions are allowing people to evaluate their own situations. Keep abortion safe and legal. Oppose SJR 4. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Next, we have John Soman of Douglas, Alaska. John, state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. John, can you hear us? And we're getting some feedback. Are you able to state your name for the record?
Am I up? I'm sorry. John Soman?
Yes.
Over on Douglas?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was listening in my meeting with Senator Stevens, Kelvin and I were debriefing. I am, I guess, just kind of appalled that we have let the misinformation so overrun this democratic, used to be democratic state and nation, that we can allow. It started probably in the 1980s. I grew up in Henry Hyde's district in Illinois. Before he proposed his amendment to take away funding for foreign providers of abortion, I talked to him, and he revealed to me that he was an unwanted child. I think that his lifelong battle then, contrary to the woman who spoke earlier about also being an unwanted birth, is a fight with women's liberty that we've been having for half a century at least. I mean, before that, in fact, but half a century since gaining the right to vote by people who were held in chains for the first 200 years of our existence, and still are to some extent. But the women's right has yet to be made an amendment, and that needs to be done too, because you nor any other person has the liberty to tell another person what their liberty is. Our liberties are all self-revealed by our education. I am so tired, as I started, to hear how the misinformation has brought out the pre-Homo sapien thinking to the extent that we are going to take someone else's liberty away from them,
John,
which we have no right to do.
John, your time has expired. Can you please wrap up your statement?
I understand. Thank you. I'm opposed to your amendment, and I wish to be sure that you realize that it's not your right to tell another person how to live their life.
Thank you for your testimony today. And next we will have Pamela Samash from Nana. Pamela, please identify yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Pamela Samish, and I'm so glad to be testifying, and I appreciate you giving me the chance. Thank you. I support this resolution. I'd like to thank Senator Shelley Hughes for this resolution. The reason is because I myself am a child of a teenager who everybody told to abort me, and no one should be able to have the right to just terminate me. And Supreme Court should have never had the authority to even claim this practice is illegal. I have a purpose, and I am just as important as anyone else. Even though I was inside of a 15-year-old girl, I'm still me, and I'm still precious in the eyes of God. And nobody has the right or ever had the right to kill me, regardless if we were poor or rich. Also, I was involved years ago in getting the signatures for the parental rights ballot. And Alaskans, am I already done?
No, you have a little bit of time. Continue.
Oh, okay. And Alaskans clearly and loudly spoke that they wanted this initiative, the parental rights initiative, years ago. But as the man mentioned earlier before, our voices were silenced and our rights as citizens were stolen from us. Why does the majority not matter? And if that's the case, why do we even vote for anything? I really hope this resolution does move forward. Please hear us this time. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. We appreciate your testimony today. Cynthia Ducey of Anchorage, you are next. Please state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Cynthia Ducey. I support SJR 4. I'm an attorney in Anchorage. I've been licensed for 37 years. I represent myself today. I speak in favor of SJ4 for the following reasons. Abortion in Alaska has been legal for through term at the discretion of the medical provider, according to Alaska regulation. And this was not passed by the legislature, but it was through administrative regulation, and this was imposed on the people by bureaucrats. And attempts to restrict abortion have been defeated by judges, including in 2001, State versus Planned Parenthood. The Supreme Court created an artifice of a constitutionally protected right to reproductive freedom. And this isn't found anywhere in the U.S. or Alaska Constitution. Last year, as you know, following statutory and regulatory changes restricting Medicaid funding, in State v. Planned Parenthood of the Great Northwest, this court used the same artifice of the constitutional right to reproductive freedom to strike down statutes and regulations that restricted Medicaid funding. And that denies the reality that Planned Parenthood's main profit is from the abortion industry. There is no constitutional right to reproductive freedom in the Constitution, but judges have interpreted that the Alaska Constitution's right to privacy only protects abortion, and this was not what the constitutional framers intended and not what our citizens wanted. And polls taken since then, and if you look at the Midnight Sun poll, the pollster got a BC rating, not an AB rating, as the Midnight Sun reported. The tides are shifting, and Americans do want restrictions on abortion. Recently, I spoke with nurses in the Providence NICU because my daughter, who's adopted, had a baby at 28 weeks who's thriving there. Babies are viable at 21 weeks, and they're survivable, and the technology there is changing, too, so that babies can survive even younger than 21 weeks.
Cynthia, could you please wrap up your comments?
Yes, I will. I would urge you to support SJR 4 and let the people decide, not judges and bureaucrats. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Cynthia, for being with us today. Teresa Syrem of Anchorage.
Okay, I have to take this call, Mackenzie. Hello.
Hello, Teresa Syrem. State your name for the record and provide.
Me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So yes, I'm representing
myself, but also all the ordinary voters of Alaska. So I just want to say that Alaskans are going to really watch how both sides of the aisle respond to this bill on its whole process. All it does is codify what should already be acknowledged by our Supreme Court, which is that the manifest meaning of a clause in our Constitution. That's all it does. And legislators of all party affiliations owe us that rock bottom right of government, of, by, and for the people. So Democrats who do not support it betray really gross insincerity in their profession to give, all the people a voice. And in particular, they deny a voice to those unborn constituents. And Republicans who fail to actively support this resolution will be, clearly marked as similarly untrue to the principles of government by the people, but also as cowards who are unwilling to protect even the most basic human right of life itself by, thwarting any possibility of us placing limits or on that, even limits, I should say. And independents will show themselves not independent at all because they're unable to stand up against those who would seek to, allow the brutal murder of unborn Alaskans and to continue to force us to pay for it, our state to pay for it. So, pro-life legislators have long evaded accountability for their failure to stand up for our basic rights, like this one, to have a constitution that our judges will be forced to acknowledge what it says, and they prevent this kind of pro-life legislation from ever coming to a floor vote. And we now have the Alaska Watchman newspaper.
Teresa?
And we now have a way to track.
Teresa, you're at time. If you could wrap up, please.
Yep. Who's gonna stand up for us, their constituents, and who will not, and our rights? And we're gonna vote you out and replace you with candidates who will stand up for our Constitution and it's the rights that it ensures us. Thank you very much, and thank you, Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Teresa, for being with us today. Next, we'll go to Tracy Sundberg of Wasilla. Tracy, please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Hi, my name is Tracy Sundberg, and calling as on myself as a parent. I'm in support of SJ4. I believe that there's been a lot of great things that have been brought up today. One of which is, as a parent of 4, ranging from 12 to 22, I have to say there is more than enough sex education out there. There's more than enough funding for it. And as for the demographics that were noted, hello?
We can hear you. Continue.
Okay. As far as the demographics that were noted, that most of the abortions happen to low-income people, I don't necessarily agree with that. I know as a parent, I would want to know. And then going back to the actual bill, I think that it's really important that the voters' vote counts. So I know you've heard a lot of that. I'm just supporting this bill, and I appreciate Senator Hughes.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony today. Next is Carol Carmen of Palmer. Carol, please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Hello, my name is Carol Carmen. I support SJR4's amendment to the Alaska Constitution. First of all, I was stunned when the legislature passed and the governor signed a bill outlawing state-funded abortions just for the judiciary to take the opposite stand, citing the state constitution as the reason. Our state constitution says our government is of, by, and for the people. Adults in our state should have the right to decide a matter of life and death, rather than courts telling us that we do not have the right to choose laws that reflect our community standards. While I don't see anything in our state constitution protecting the murder of unborn babies, this resolution should take care of the problem of judges legislating from the bench on this issue. Additionally, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is the well-known phrase in the United States Declaration of Independence. The first word is life. The phrase gives 3 examples of the unalienable rights which the Declaration says have been given to all humans by their Creator and which governments are created to protect. It's become common practice for the judiciary to overstep their bounds in ways that cannot be backed up by law or the Constitution. The excuses they use are confusing at best. For example, right to privacy does not mean right to murder. And if judges truly want equal protection, they would outlaw abortion as equal protection of life for all humans, as we find in the Declaration of Independence. To those who are pro-abortion, I would say that your right to control your body ends where another individual's body begins. That baby inside of you is another human being. There are always other options for unwanted pregnancies. Even when the mother's life is in danger, there are procedures that strive to save the life of both parties.
Thank you. You're going to need to wrap up. We're at the 2-minute, Carol.
Okay, thank you. While this bill does not reflect abortion in particular and does not prevent it, I want to thank you, Senator Hughes, for writing it because it does give us that opportunity as citizens of this state to vote for bills that do reflect our community standards. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Ms. Carmen. Next is Stephanie Taylor of Anchorage. Stephanie, can you hear me? Can you state your name for the record, please? Stephanie, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, go ahead. We can hear you now. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Stephanie Taylor, and I am representing myself. Thank you, Senator Hughes, for this resolution and for holding these hearings. I am calling in support of SJR 4. Pro-life Alaskans have worked hard to get laws passed that support the protection of unborn life. At every turn, Alaskan courts have reversed these efforts. It is abundantly clear that our courts have not remained neutral on the issue of abortion. The people of Alaska have made it very clear by our votes and our efforts that we support the protection of unborn life. Reasonable regulation of abortion is in the best interest of women and unborn babies. There are plenty of legal protections in place to protect women's privacy and young Alaskans. The fact that abortion is legal does not make it right. At one time, slavery was legal, but everyone would agree that it was not right. It's time for Alaska to move forward and enshrine the protection of human life in our Constitution. This amendment would permit the decisions Alaskans have made to stand and hopefully save precious lives in the process. Please pass SJR 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for being with us today. Next, Lisa Gentleman of Eagle River. Lisa, you are next.
Yes.
Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Hello, my name is Lisa Gentleman. I'm calling in support of SJR 4. I'm representing myself. I'm here today to ask Alaskan people and legislators to support SJR 4. We must defend, protect, and speak up for the safety and the rights of the unborn until they are capable of defending themselves. Even before our Constitution was written, we were all given the unalienable right to life by our Creator, as is stated clearly in the Declaration of Independence that we have the right to life. Why do we have government? It is to secure our rights and the rights of the unborn. The government must step up and support the rights to the unborn. They are people too. Due to the fact that some governmental officials, particularly the judicial branch, are not following the Declaration of Independence, they have wrongly taken the unalienable right of life away, and they will be held to account someday, even in a higher court, the court of God. According to directions given to the Americans by the writers of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, we must take it upon ourselves in sacred honor, I quote, and we must declare judges unfit to rule in a free nation and remove them from power and instead institute officials who will defend the right of life and, quote, assent to laws most wholesome and necessary for the public good. I have been a single parent. It is challenging. In the womb, they told me they weren't sure if the baby was alive, and then 10 days later, the heartbeat came. I proceeded forward with the birth, became a single mother when the baby was 17 days old. I had to pursue education. It was very difficult. It continued on, had to ask for help, had to ask to live in a neighbor's home, left everything. But we can make it, and I'm so thankful for my son, who's now going to be 31, and grandchildren. I'm so glad for laying down my life and pursuing this.
Lisa, your time is up. Could you please wrap up?
So please support all life, especially the unborn in SJR4. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Next, we'll go to Hillary Hunter of Petersburg.
Hello. Sorry. This is Hillary Hunter in Petersburg, Alaska, and I am against this bill, or not bill, but SBJ4. I am testifying on behalf of myself, but I am an advocate for victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, and also survivors of sexual assault as a minor. And Alaska in 2019 was 4 times the national average for sexual assault, and the average age in 2019 was 15-year-olds. 15-year-olds can get pregnant, and quite often it can be a family member or someone within their own family. Requiring them to have permission from somebody to be involved, to go and to find out what their own rights are after the full experience of having their body taken away from them, the control over their own body taken away from them, to tell them that it is more important to spend 9 months going through hormonal, emotional, physical challenges, knowing that their body isn't their own. Sounds like a recipe for mental health and possible suicide, which are also at very high risk for in Alaska. And I think that if we are prioritizing young people and Alaskans, we need to protect people and let them know that they are important, that they do matter, and that their voices deserve to be heard and they deserve to be protected. I think that that is what this is about, and I think that it is incredibly important that before we take away any rights and protect people, we make sure that there is a system there to catch them. And I often hear for abortions that there is going to be protection for people because people experience sexual assault is an exception for them, but now working within the system as an advocate myself, especially during COVID, it takes over a year if they're convicted, and it's under 10%. It's under 10% where they find them guilty. Most often there are no other witnesses, so there's no one there to testify that it really happened. And
Hillary, you are at time now. Could you please wrap up?
Yeah. So I really appreciate the opportunity to call in, and I'm really glad that I got this last moment. And I think this is incredibly important, and I appreciate that it's open to the public so that voices can be heard, that people that this really affects can speak up for themselves.
Thank you very much, Hillary, for joining us together. We are at time. I'm going to take 2 more, and then I'm going to repeat the number. I know there are a lot of you on here, and I just want to say I'm very grateful for your interest, and I wish we had time to hear from all of you, but you will be able to provide your testimony in writing, and we will make sure the committee members get the information. I also want to mention that this bill is referred next to the Judiciary Committee and to the Finance Committee, so there will be further opportunities for testimony. So with that, we're going to take Candy Miller, and then the last person to testify will be Sherry Eichenlaw. So Candy, if you would like to go ahead and state your name, and you have 2 minutes.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm calling on behalf of myself, Candy Miller. I'm in District 9, West Palmer area. I support SJR4.
Okay, I'm sorry, folks. They got 2 now. I do not know what happened. Get things going here real quick. they're giving testimony on the abortion bill right now, the SJR 4. If you, I'm going to try to replay this one in its entirety here a little bit later. It is well worth watching. I started out this video today doing the transportation for House Bill and what they were doing for doubling the motor fuel tax, House Bill 104, and what they were trying to do there. And I was able to give testimony on that. I'm too late in line to be able to give testimony today on this bill. There is definitely an extreme line of testimony to be given for SJR 4, which is what they're classifying as the abortion bill. And basically what it's going to do is it puts Alaska's Constitution more in line with what we have within the federal government, and so that it is not as extreme as it is right now. The activists that are against having this bill passed are giving all of these extreme measures that we're going to go back to the days where you had to go into the dark back dirty alley and find somebody who would use a coat hanger or go even further medieval times on you, so to speak, to abort the baby. And this is the type of extremism that they're trying to portray out there about this bill, which is 100% fact false. There is no truth to it whatsoever. Fake news, call it whatever you want to. It is baseless and unsubstantiated. It is just their feelings of what they want to portray. That is not what it was in this bill to do. What it will do, though, if it passed in the way that it is currently written, it will help be able to give parents, us, the people that are responsible for our children up until they're the age of 18, back the responsibility over our children's lives. Take it out of government hands. Take it out of these far extreme activists that, to put it simply, think a 3-year-old is old enough to make a decision to have a gender change. And start the process at that point. This is the type of extremism that is also you can apply towards our abortions. Personally, the way I'm standing right now, I'm 100% behind SJR 4. I want to see it pass, and it would be a major step forward. We'll still have abortions in this state. People will still be able to make their choice. My body, my choice, so I'm all for that. One thing I wish this bill did have in it was taking out the taxpayer portion funding for the bill. I know that I'm asking a lot there, but I personally don't want to pay for someone else to go kill their kid. I believe all lives matter, and if you're choosing to end a life out there, don't make me pay for it. And that's where I draw the line 100% all the way up and down. As for the main portion that I got videoed here today, that is the transportation bill, House Bill 104. It will double the motor fuel tax. So for all you folks that live here in the Mat-Su Valley, just like along with me, who travel to Anchorage on a daily basis, imagine 8 cents more a gallon. They're saying the average commuter is 9,100 miles. If you're traveling 100 miles a day, 5 days a week, basically 300 days a year, and that's 200 miles just to go the one way and back again. So if you're traveling 200 miles every single day to go back and forth at 8 cents a gallon, imagine how much more you're going to be paying a year. They based it off of 9,100 miles that this increase is going to help affect. They don't take a look at the 100,000 of us that commute every single day. They just don't have no concept. This is one of the questions that was asked by Representative Kevin McCabe, and he was trying to find out why they couldn't get things to work the way they were supposed to work, and why they couldn't get it paid for, why they couldn't tell us what it was going to cost somebody commuting from the valley into Anchorage. So, but they still passed it through the committee 4-3. This is the same bill that we had last year, House Bill 115. You guys all know House Bill 115. I hope you do, because I've shared that post, that meeting, over and over and over again telling you all this bill was going to come back under a new number, and it did. It came back as HB104. It's the same motor fuel tax as HB115, which if you were to search for it on Facebook and you typed in Politadick HB115, you will find the posts that I'm talking about of me over and over and over again trying to hound out there how important it is to remember this bill. It was one of the questions that I asked every single candidate that I interviewed this past year running for office. What do you think about HB115? I know what the answers are there. Ironically enough, Kevin McCabe there is Representative McCabe. He is also one of those that I asked that question to. So it looks like he's done his research. He's asking the questions that need to be answered, but the Finance Committee moved it through anyways. And without giving him an answer, will they get it into the next committee? Who knows? We'll just have to stay tuned. They had it at the finish line last year in the House, but COVID stepped in and stopped them from pushing that bill through last year. So this year, because it's controlled by the exact same Democrats and rhinos that was in it before, I expect to find ourselves right back in the same shape that we were in last year at the end before COVID hit. That the same extreme, we're going to double the fuel tax, we're going to add an income tax, we're going to see about probably putting a sales tax onto everything. We're going to continue to basically tax. The biggest tax of all is going to be our permanent fund dividend. They're structuring bills in it right now that's going to eliminate the corpus and combine the ERA and the corpus into one account, and then we won't have no say as Alaskans over how that money gets spent. So the $57 billion that's sitting in the corpus right now would be in full control of our legislators, not us. This bill has been rewritten 3 different bills through the Senate, and I know of 2 going through the House right now that's going to permanently tax us for our permanent funds. And the talk is this year, if we get a PFD at all, they're only going to give us $500. They're basing it on the $6 billion cap, and that they're going to increase the budget from last year around $345 million is what's coming out of their finance committees. A lot of stuff you're not going to hear from them that I'm spilling out here right now. But that's the numbers that they've got. That's what they're producing. I've shared the videos, but you really got to watch them to catch these little nuggets that they don't want you to acknowledge. Anyways, don't forget, like, share this video. People need to know their fuel tax is going to be doubled, that there is a bill out there to start putting control under what happens with abortions within Alaska. My ultimate wish they had in there, like I said before, is that they take the taxpayer portion out of it to where we no longer pay for other people's abortions. They want an abortion, they can have an abortion. Just don't make me pay for it. And I'd love to see the late-term abortions get reduced down to, say, maybe 21 weeks or less. You know, I'd love to not see it happen at all, but get it down to where, you know, at 21 weeks, a baby is a baby. They can live outside of the womb. There is no excuse. If that child can survive and live a happy, healthy life, why are we terminating these pregnancies? In Alaska's abortion policies goes all the way up to the date of birth. So that just gives you how extreme Alaska really is, and why we need to get more in line with the federal government and what they have in place for abortions currently at this point, or close to it. It's a lot closer to what it is than we are on the furthest extreme on the other end. It just doesn't get advertised. So again, like, share this video, let your friends hear all about it. Don't forget to go to my website, Politadick.com, and support what matters most. It's your guys out there who watch me, who watch the live streams that I do, follow the content that I'm posting out there. You are what makes this happen. And I have a passion. I love to report on politics. I found that I really do enjoy what I do. I'd love to turn this into a full-time job, but I actually have to work for a living. So because of that, I could use your support. I'd love to turn this into my full-time job. And to be able to do that, if you were to go to Politadick.com and click that support button, make a small donation, become a monthly subscriber. $5 a month is all it takes to become a subscriber with Politadick, and you help to support to make sure that I can do things like this. Help support doing live streams like the video last night of Senator Shower in a Zoom session with about 100 of us all in the audience there here in the Valley last night, talking about SB 39 and SB, I think it's 43 bills, the one for our judicial review, or SJ 14, excuse me, and SB 39, our judicial review judges, and the other one for getting voter integrity for like ballot harvesting and all the addressed, all the questions that causes the largest amount of fraud that happens in any election, documented fraud. Just never enough, as they say, to overturn an election. But when you have people like Bryce Edgman, who is holding his seat prior to this by a flip of a coin because the vote was tied and they flipped a quarter, heads or tails, you win. This tells you how important it is to get these kind of laws under control. If ballot harvesting was done in his district, who knows how it actually got that close in the vote to begin with. So again, go to my website, politadick.com, click that support button, help me out, and make sure that I can keep the content coming to you. Have a great day.